آفر شهپر محوش پریوش چه
Now, I'm really excited to have Shahriar with us today because I'm a big fan of his work. In fact, in my house I have some of his chili-infused oil, something that I recently saw was available in a cute place downtown, a place called Beethoven Museum, which is a sort of multiplex place with a cafe, a museum for music, and down in a cellar they have various craft items, and oddly enough, Shahriar's infused vinegar and oils. There you go, that was a bit of a plug for him. So if any of our listeners are in Iran and know where that is, well, actually, Mohammed, I think we'll add a link to that on our website so they can go and find out where to buy his items.
Well, definitely, you can find a relevant podcast, and the links will be there.
Great.
And we should charge Beethoven Cafe for
I think we're going to get a
like,
percentage.
Yeah.
In oil, in infused oil is what we're going to be getting.
از غم شوهر ملالت لت 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 میکشی دختری 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 دیدم که ما تیک 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 میکشی
So, Shahriar, welcome to the show.
Hi guys, thank you very much for having me here.
It's our
Great
pleasure.
to be in the show.
Yeah, likewise. Shahriar, I should give a little bit of an introduction here because Shahriar is quite worldly, has traveled the world, worked around the world, mostly in Southeast Asia. Shahriar, help us out here. Which countries have you been working in up until now?
I have worked in Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Maldives, and I did work closely like 3 years with Australia. As well, I travel in Europe, and after 20 years, I'm back in my
Good
own
to have
country.
you back. So you've been traveling the world, working around the world, enlightening foreigners with the, or non-Iranians with Iranian food, or is it mostly been working, creating, I guess, Southeast Asian dishes?
Actually, I was a mix of like Iranian, especially in the festive season, I was doing the Persian and as well as Middle Eastern food, but mainly because I was an executive chef, so I have to have variety of the different cuisine in the kitchen.
It is almost a great shame that the subject of today's show is small in comparison to the wealth of knowledge that Shahriar has. We wanted to keep it simple for our listeners, so we wanted to start off with the basics, didn't we, Mohammed? We wanted to tick off the obvious items here of Iranian food.
Actually, the question came from Susie. Her question was, why is every Iranian bread flat?
It's back, I think, to the historic things because of the clay oven we have and type of clay oven. Most of the bread is flat or round, and after many years the changes come. Especially I was reading the history of sangak, which is one of our national bread.
Shahriar, help us out here. So sangak obviously is doesn't mean anything to our audience at this point, but
sangak means,
let's describe
in
it here.
English means pebble, like a small stone. Yeah. So they create the oven, which is according to history created during Safavi by Sheikh Bahai. And sangak has different variety. The most famous one nowadays is come from the northeast as well, like qayanat, which they have a very good saffron as well.
So let's describe this for our audience here. So sangak, for me, whenever I see this and I pass these bakeries on the streets of Iran, they're thankfully plentiful, and you'll normally see the breads hanging up just outside, and they always look like sort of like the skin of a cow or something. I mean, the color is a sort of brown, sort of deep yellowy brown color. They're hanging up on a spike, and they sort of look like a hide or like a sort of piece of leather. Now, it's interesting actually, whenever I go and buy this bread, I've learned the hard way that because of the small pebbles that you mentioned, Shahriar, here, you've got to be careful not to eat those because they sometimes stick to the bread. So not to eat those, not only because you're probably going to lose a tooth, but
I chipped a tooth actually.
Really?
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I bit
So
one of
most
those
of the
pebbles.
foreigner must be really careful about that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I check them every time.
Not only this though, but then you've got to be careful of this. You've got a hot stone, a hot pebble in your mouth.
By the time you eat it, the stone is cold.
Well,
still hard.
I pick them up straight from the store. I go straight in and buy them and eat them before I get home.
Be careful anyway.
So sangak is quite a, I mean, it's a flat bread, and most breads in Iran is something I noticed upon coming out. Most breads are flat, so that is because of that cooking process.
They have the like a flat bread, I believe, because of the type of clay oven we have or the clay tanur we have. And in different parts of Iran.
Now, we can't do this show without mentioning, and I'm not going to spoil it by saying which I think is the best, but I'm going to spoil it because I do think Barbari is the far superior bread to be had in Iran. Shahriar, describe to us Barbari. What does this look like? What different sort of taste might it have compared to other breads?
The Barbari has, they use different kind of flour. It's more heavy flour than any other bread. It's similar to sangak, but of course the grade of the flour is quite different. It's introduced by an ethnic group of Barbar, which come from Afghanistan to Iran.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. From there, during the Qajar time, this bread introduced in Tehran.
Yeah. So Barbari is, to describe this, it's kind of more yellowy and it's kind of almost like a ribbed, if you can say, top to it. And you can choose, upon purchasing this at the bakery, you can choose whether you want to have sesame seeds on top or not.
Yeah, they put sesame seeds because Afghanistan and the northeast of Iran is one of the biggest producer of sesame seed, and also the poppy seed and black seed. So it's come with different kind of seed, and the color on the top, because of the brushing they put with the starch and the water mix, the color will change in the oven.
So Shahriar, how do you take your Barbari? When you go to the bakery, are you asking for the sesame seeds on top or not?
I use for black seed, actually, the poppy seed they use on top because it's quite amazing taste.
It's the far superior one. You've got to get the poppy seeds on top. How about you, Mohammed? What do you?
But sangak is the original Iranian bread. Now it's my favorite.
Oh, okay. The battle begins. The battle of breads has now begun. My experience here in Iran of the breads is there's those two more dominant, I would say, as far as taste, texture, usage, the sangak and the barbari. But a common type of bread that is used and often used with eating kebabs is the lavash. Am I saying that correctly, Shahriar?
Not actually. The luxurious one is always go with sangak, because sangak has a little bit of spongy texture, so it will take the greasy, the juice of the kebab in it, so it's quite nice. But of course, the common one for the normal restaurants, they use a lot of lavash.
Yeah. So lavash, I just want to explain this, and because whenever I see it, and I still do this, and whenever I see it, it looks like Lego. It's just it literally is a flat piece of Lego. This is the bread that has a sort of a shelf life or an edible life of about, I think, 5 seconds. If you don't eat lavash within 5 seconds of it either being cooked or pulled out of the plastic bag, which you sometimes get in the restaurants, this thing goes hard, and I myself don't like it like that.
We have many type of lavash. Some places they add like sesame seeds. Some places they just make it plain. Some place they don't add, so much yeast or bicarbonate of soda. So they call it like a nana-mahalli, but it's basically is a lavash, and they make with different kind of like a heavy flour. So it's gonna become thicker, and you have to have it like very fresh, because if it stays, become like a crispy.
So to help our audience out here, lavash is probably the lightest of the breads that we've described so far. It's a very pale sort of creamy color, I guess. Actually, Mohammed, I'm thinking we've got some homework here. We will be adding pictures of all of these on our website. So where can our audience go to check out the pictures of these breads that we're talking about?
Yeah, you can go on askaniranian.com and simply search for bread.
Yeah, so there will be a tag for bread there, and you can look at this post or click on that tag and find the relevant pictures. What I think might be interesting is for our audience here is what time of day Iranians eat bread. So is it a breakfast thing or a dinner? I think we spoke earlier about how you would have this with kebab. I mean, is there a more prominent time of day that Iranians would have bread?
We have bread with breakfast, with lunch and dinner.
So it's fair to say that pretty much any time of day will be a bread time of day.
Fresh bread
here
is
in Iran.
always
Fresh bread.
good.
Yes. Actually, you're reminding me, speaking of fresh bread, in Iran, when you go and queue for the bread at the bakery, there's two queues. And there's the one side when you queue and you only want one piece of bread. And then on the other side is when you want multiple pieces. And the multiples queue just takes forever. You can never get to the front. But when you only want one piece of bread, you just jump to the front, get the bread and get out. If I'm not mistaken, that's the case. Yes, Mohammed?
Yeah, that's actually true.
So Shahriar, your experience with foreigners and bread, have you had any foreign guests coming to Iran? They've tried the bread out and do they have a particular favorite? Or the other way around, have you, maybe like my father, who it's bizarre, my father leaves the country and I swear half of his suitcase is filled up with breads that he takes back.
Actually, I do the same things. Every time I used to come to Iran, I used to take a full suitcase of sangak and take it with me all the time.
Now I've mentioned that, I think my friends are going to be requesting I bring back bread for them as sorati, which we spoke about in a previous episode, Mohammed.
You want to take a souvenir from Iran, you could freeze bread, as Iranian mothers do when they go to visit their student kids.
They cut it up, don't they? They cut it up into small squares, put them into freezer bags.
Exactly.
And then fill up the soup.
Puzzle. If you want to show the real sangak size, you have to make a puzzle.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, are you guys like me when you leave the bakery? How much of the bread remains when you get home? I eat at least half of the bread, but it's over a meter, the length of these bread. A meter by about 40 centimeters, I think, is the sort of size of these. So what about, have you traveled abroad with bread and you've...
yeah, many times.
And then, so what are the foreigners saying about the bread? Which one have they preferred?
Everyone loves it, and they were asking me, oh, you make it. But I was like, no, it's not possible to make sangak. We used to
actually took Iranian bread as souvenir to your foreign friends?
Not really for them, because I'm selfish, so I have it with them. No, see that you have the sangak, for example, you have to have a good kebab, or you have to have like kashke badamjan, the eggplant with the dry yogurt things. So they have to have it try together,
You've reminded me of the Turks from the northwest of Iran. They, when they have Barbari bread, they'll have it with a large glass of tea without milk, unfortunately, and they'll be sticking the bread in and eating it. Does that happen, Shahriar? Is that a joke? But I think people say that as a joke, but do they do that?
They do that, yeah. I have seen some of the driver, which they have a big truck for transit. They used to come like to the ports. Those drivers, they don't have enough money. They used to, make the Barbari or the tafton to the small pieces, and they put Coca-Cola, or those days we have Canada Dry, and they used to eat. Yeah. So
you make like a Barbari soda soup.
It's a type of things, yeah. And they used to live on it because those soft drink, they have contain a lot of sugar, and then the bread has carbs. So they fill them up until they have another good meal. I don't know when.
Also, to my experience, I hope somebody corrects me if I'm wrong, but there is this legitimate Turkmen food, which is bread and tea. They call it chai chorak, which means bread and tea.
Yeah.
I heard it from Turkmens. They actually eat it for a meal. I think it's sweet tea and bread.
So I think we are building up to the important vote here. So I think we should probably put this on Twitter as well. A vote to the Iranians out there in our audience. They can vote which of the breads is by far superior among the breads. But just for the around the table here at the moment, what are the votes? Shahriar, what is the best bread?
I go for both sangak and Barbari. Both of them is good enough for me. I love them.
Okay, and Mohammed, your vote would be?
Sangak, I guess.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
And for me, it's definitely going to be Barbari, and it has to have the sesame seeds on the top. But Mohammed, I think we should put a poll out there and ask the Iranians in our audience. So if you want to participate in this vote, where should they go, Mohammed?
You got to go on Twitter and look for the handle @Ask_An_Iranian.
So go there and have your say. It's a bit of a shame though, for our first episode here with Shahriar, this huge font of knowledge with, he's an amazing chef, and we've brought him here to discuss something so simple. So we hope to have Shahriar here again soon to discuss more complicated things other than simple things like bread. So Shahriar, do come back, do join us on a show in the future.
Sure, definitely. Yeah, I love to be back.
دیگه حالی به آدم میمونه نه والا احوالی به آدم میمونه نه بلا دیگه حالی به آدم میمونه نه والا
So if you have any questions specifically for Shahriar, who's now committed to at least another show with us, please add those in the comments section or reply to any of our social media posts. Thank you once again, Shahriar, for joining us on this show.
You're most welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye.
پریوش